Hello friends, I'm Fide instructor Atul Dahale and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to see an interesting game played by the people's favorite Grandmaster Anish Giri. Yes, in the semi-finals of the Chessable Masters tournament which is being held on the Chess24 platform, Anish Giri played a beautiful game against Ian Nepo in their first mini match, and in this game Anish Giri played beautiful knight sacrifice. You can say that he gave nightmare to his opponent. So without further delay, let's get started with the game and try to understand what happened after that knight sacrifice. How did he win in such a beautiful style against such a strong player like Nepo? So the game started with d4. Anish Giri was white, Nepo was black, and then knight to the f6, c4, e6, and here he played knight to the f3, d5 was played, knight to the c3, and now c5. Well, this is Queen's Gambit decline and the Tarash variation you can say. And here after c into d5, knight into d5, it has converted into the semi-Tarash opening. Here e4 was played, the knight into c3, d into c3, c into d4, c into d4, bishop to the b4 check, bishop d2, bishop into d2, queen into d2, and castle. Well, until now we have seen a little bit quickly, but I will just tell you that this position is very famous from the opening perspective, and Anish Giri has already played this opening several times, especially against one player who is very famous in the world, Ding Liren. We will see when he changed. Here Anish Giri played bishop to the c4, then knight to the d7 was played, then white also castled. You can see that in this position after b6, white has a very good control in the center of the board. His knight is placed, this bishop is also well placed, the rook is going to come on the e1 square, the other rook will come on the d1 square, and he will have a great center in this position. But as I mentioned earlier, in this position Anish Giri has already played one game against Ding Liren, and in that game he played d5. Well, obviously rook f e1 is perfectly possible in this position. Then game might have proceeded with bishop to the b7, rook a d1, rook to the c8. Now bishop is being attacked, bishop to the b3 and rook e8. This is a normal position in this opening, but d5 is the move which Anish Giri has played in the game, and now knight c5 was played, rook f e1, and in this game previously Ding Liren opted for bishop to the b7, and the game continued with rook at d1, then rook to the c8, h4, a very interesting idea played by Anish, then queen to the f6, queen to the e3, cd5, ed5, a6, and then h5. The game continued and in the end it was drawn. So in this game, after rook f e1, Nepo decided to play e into d5, and this is already a very new position you can say. Here previously only one top game was played, and in that game bishop into d5 was played, which is completely playable in this position. After bishop to the b7, white played rook a d1, queen to the e7, and queen to the f4. This game was played between Shimano and Dominguez. Both the players are quite strong in the world. Dominguez, we know this thing that he is a 2700 player and Shimano is 2650 player. But Anish Giri has different plans. He played e into d5, keeping the pawn on the d5 square. You can say that this pawn is isolated, but in the game also this pawn became a very great asset for Anish Giri, and because of this pawn only interesting possibilities were happened in the game. So let's see what happened. Queen to the d6 was played by Nepo, and now he plays queen to the d4, centralizing the queen. Okay, now this queen is also eyeing towards the g7 pawn if it's needed. Black played bishop to the b7, and he's putting some pressure on the d5 pawn. White simply played rook a d1, and now here rook a e8 was played by Nepo. Here I personally prefer to play rook f e8 followed by this rook coming on the d8 square, so that we can put more pressure on the d5 pawn. Okay, but Nepo has decided to play in a different way. He played rook a e8, and now Anish places his knight in the center of the board with knight to the e5. This knight is a really nice placed piece. You can say it is attacking on these important squares, and whenever the knight is centrally placed, it is becomes a very strong piece. And we will see what happens. a6 was played with the idea of obviously to play b5, and Anish plays a3 in this position, making a room for this bishop to go to the a2 square. If b5 is played, then obviously bishop a2 is one of the options which white will be playing. But instead of this, in this position, Nepo decided to double the rooks on the e file, and he played rook to the e7. And after rook to the e7, Anish understood that Nepo wants to double the rooks, and now Anish sets up a very smart trap, you can say. He plays rook to the e3 in this position, and now Nepo, who was not tactically alert in this position, played rook f e8, and this is a big mistake, I'll say. Now can you spot the cute little sacrifice which Anish Giri has planned when he played rook to the e3? A smart trap. Well, the move was knight into f7, and in this position black doesn't have any time to capture on e3, because obviously here knight into d6 will be played, and if you play rook to the e1, rook into e1, rook into e1, this is not a checkmate, because the bishop will come back on the f1 square and everything will be safe. So this was Anish Giri's idea. So in this position, after knight into f7, black was forced to play king into f7, and now again a good move, that is rook to the e6 was played. Obviously in this position you cannot capture on e6, because after this move the queen on d6 will be lost for sure. So rook into e6 is not a possibility, so black played queen to the d8, and now in this position white played another good move, that is queen to the f4 check, not afraid of this king going into the his den, you can say, on the g8 square, because he has a very nice move at his disposal, that is rook into e7, and now rook into e7, and then this bishop which was sleeping until now comes into the game with a great effect. He plays d6. Now this is a discovered check, the rook is also being attacked. Here rook e6 is almost forced, and now you can say that white is completely winning, because after d7 the queen is also tied down at this position, because he cannot go anywhere, because d8 is just going to be queen in this case. Here black played g6, and now after rook to the d6, Nepomucci decided to resign in this game. Well, just to clarify, I will just show you what would have happened. Obviously the rook on e6 is going to fall, but let's suppose bishop c6 was played in the game, then after rook into e6, knight into e6, bishop into e6 check, this king is not having any good squares. If king g7 is played, then we can play queen to the e5. Obviously queen f6 is not a possibility, because after queen f6, king f6, d8 pawn will queen. And if you play something like king to the h6, then we can give queen e5, queen e3 check, king g7, queen to the c3 check, and wherever this king moves in this position, we will just capture the bishop on c6, and white will be winning. So you can say that this game was a little bit short but very cute, played by none other than our beloved chess grandmaster Anish Giri from Netherlands. I hope that Anish Giri will win the finals also against Magnus Carlsen. Let's see what happens. Till then, we will meet with something interesting in the next video. Do subscribe to my channel if you liked it. Thank you for watching the video.